3. Hi, it's George Nordhaus, and welcome to Monday Morning. Our famous and often repeating presenter, Brent Kelly, who's with BizGriz Training, does a lot of work for agencies. He does a lot of training for them in a beautiful way, and I listen to them when I can, because he does webinars and training, and we'll tell you more about that because we're going to have a little surprise for you at the end. But he was an agent for a long time, and then he loved the marketing thing. He's such a good speaker that he did it, and so he's got a series of these, and I can and he's very kind to say, well, sure, every once in a while we'll put one on. When I saw this one on communications, I thought, yeah, it's a little basic, but not so basic that there's not somebody in your agency that can learn a lot from it, and maybe me too. Well, you see his bio there, and he is quite a well-known guy in that training field. So hold that thought, and Brent, tell me, what are we going to talk about today?
Yeah, well, George, thanks for having me on again. Always a pleasure to be with you.
Yes, sir.
But today we're going to talk about the principles of dynamic communication. And as you stated, oftentimes the idea of communication seems simple. Like, okay, we all know how to speak and talk, and
yeah, right.
We're all business people here, right? We're all adults. But really, the question I would ask is how well do you actually do it? That's the key, and that the principle of the fact that everyone communicates, but very few people actually really connect. And so that's what we're going to talk about today, is the principles of dynamic communication.
All right, let's go for it.
So if you're ready to go, I'm ready to go.
Amen.
All right. So I want to kick off to the audience today, and whether you're listening in the morning or afternoon or evening, right? I want to start off by asking an important question, and just something to kind of think about as I go through this is what do you think is the primary cause for your positive results, right? When you think about when I make a sale or acquire a new piece of business, what typically is the primary cause for your results? And as you're sitting there and maybe contemplating some different things that may have worked for you, I just want to give a little backstory to kind of make some sense of this. And as George mentioned, I spent 15 years as an active insurance agent, and then now I've spent a year and a half running my own coaching, speaking, and training business. And so I spent my entire career in sales, and the vast majority of that I spent doing 100% commission sales, which I know many of the audience listening now may be the exact same way. And I've cold called, I've networked, I developed mutual relationships, I've spoken in front of groups, I've written blogs, I've used email drip campaigns, social media, referrals, anything you could think of, right? I know, George, you're a marketing guy. You probably tried it all as well. And
every bit, yeah.
I've done all kinds of things. Yeah, and some of those things worked really well, and other things maybe not as well. And some of them have been more traditional sales and marketing methods, and some maybe more of new scale type of methods. But as I've done some reflection, put some deep thought into results, and also I work and coach and train other agents, and ask them, what has been the primary cause of your successful results? And after really looking at it, other than your attitude, which starts everything, the ability to communicate and connect with your fellow team members, with company partner reps, with underwriters, and then of course your prospects and clients is the #1 skill that will determine whether you're going to succeed and stand out in today's world. And so today what I want to do is just share some basic communication principles that every agent, every agency needs to understand, and that why communicating isn't about shouting the loudest to the most people, but the most effective people figure out who to connect with the right people. And one of my mentors is a guy named John C. Maxwell. He's written 70+ books on leadership.
Wow.
And John says that leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less. And what I would like to add to that is that connecting increases your influence in every situation. So if you want to be influential, if you want to reach people, you've got to figure out how to connect really, really well, right? And so I've learned a number of communication and connection successes and many more failures in my own career. Every day, right? I'll have maybe a success and then maybe 2 failures to go with it, right?
Oh, yeah.
And that's just the way that life is.
Yeah.
But what I've learned, I just want to give a kind of fun background, and some of my biggest communication failures and gaps have happened with my own kids. And if you have kids, grandkids, no kids, you probably have experienced the same. And it wasn't long ago, George. Actually, it was last Easter. I got some for the kids got my kid. I have 4 kids, and you're going to see them here in a second.
Hmm.
They got some sidewalk paint,
Oh my
and
gosh.
so yeah, they're out there. And I said, well, you guys can paint on the driveway. You can paint on the sidewalk. But could you guys not paint on yourself, because I don't want to have to clean it up? And of course, I go in and do some things here and there in the house. And when I come out not too long later,
Oh
this was
my
what I walked out to.
God.
Yes.
Look at that
So
little one.
again,
Oh.
yeah. He's like, what? Yeah, his sister's painted all over him. Well, he probably did that to himself too.
Yeah,
But
right, right.
obviously, I wasn't very influential. I didn't connect very well. And then, of
I don't
course,
think so.
the little guy, George, you just mentioned, just this past fall, or this past winter, he has the ability to get into every type of marker and draw on everything. I told his sisters, I said, hey, listen, girls, don't leave a permanent marker out whenever you possibly can. Of course, this is what I walked out to one morning with my little guy with permanent marker on his legs, on our table, and of course on our wall. And I've also learned this too, George. This is kind of funny. Is that I was looking back, I'm like, man, connection and influence with my own kids, it actually cost me money. I mean, like tangibly, it's cost me money. This was
Oh no.
well, she's now 6, but she was about a year and a half old in this picture, and was found her under the table cutting up money. So just thought I'd share that for a little humor as we kick off today. But
Yeah.
you look at communication. There was a presidential historian. His name was Robert Dallek, and he was able to examine all the United States presidents, and that figured out that those that were influential and connected had 5 basic qualities. Now, I'm not going to get into any type of political discussion, especially this time of year, right or left, I don't care, but the point of it is that those presidents who have been able to be successful in connecting and influencing others have had 5 common qualities. Number 1 is vision.
Hmm.
They had a clear and compelling vision where they wanted to go and what they wanted to do, and they could share that vision, and people would buy into it. Number 2 is pragmatism. This isn't so much with communication, but it is the fact that they can take information and then thus make a decision and act upon it. Number 3 is consensus building. You look at insurance agents, you look at insurance agencies, to build a consensus often is very difficult, but presidents that were successful have been able to do that. Probably the best example, I don't know if you've ever read Team of Rivals, George, or watched the movie Lincoln,
Yeah, yeah. Oh yeah, I
but
loved it. Yeah, I
yeah,
love it.
I
Yeah.
mean, so
I'm a Hoosier. I've
Abraham
been
Lincoln,
yeah, Abraham. I've been to
okay,
his house back. He lived in southern Indiana for a while, right near me. And
yeah,
everybody's a Lincoln fan. He's the number one. Everybody knows that.
yeah. It's amazing because you look at Lincoln's story and reads different things, and I mean the fact that he brought in, and Team of Rivals says, brought in all these people to his cabinet that were not just, I mean, rivals. They were like fierce enemies oftentimes, but
Hmm.
he was able to build consensus with them and then make progress, which was impressive. And then, of course, charisma. Charisma is just something that, some people walk into a room and you just kind of feel it, right? They've got that charisma, that confidence to them, and that's very important for connection. And then, of course, trustworthiness. You have to be trustworthy. And one president talked about communication and connection. Gerald Ford said this quote. He said, "If I went back to college again, I would concentrate only on 2 areas: learning to write and speak in front of an audience. Nothing is more important to the ability to communicate effectively." So
Hmm.
again, even President Ford talks about the effective communication. And I want to share this. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time, but give some insight on what separates high achievers and low achievers. And this is certainly true in the insurance industry when you look at it. There's going to be a common thread that you're going to see throughout this. But high achievers understand that there's profits involved, but they care about people first, right, as well as profits. And if you look at low achievers, it's basically, hey, am I going to survive for me today? Right? There's just a different focus there.
Hmm.
You look at high achievers, and they're always looking at things very optimistically, where low achievers, they don't trust anybody. There's that common, a little bit, I'm not going to trust whatever it is that you say. High achievers, I think this is really important. High achievers, they seek advice from those they serve.
Hmm.
And you think about that in the insurance industry in particular. There is this isn't for everybody, but there's a lot, and I've been part of this in my days, where as you get more experience and more knowledge, maybe more letters after your name for your designations, you start to have maybe a bit of arrogance where it's, I don't need to seek advice from my customers or my prospects. I already know it all. And that's what happens to low achievers. I don't need advice. I got it all figured out. And then, of course, the high achievers are amazing listeners. They listen to everybody. And this goes from their superiors down to, maybe their lowest paying client. They're listening. Whereas low achievers, I don't really want to communicate at all. I'm just going to read the book or, read the policy definition and move on. So there's been a very big difference between high achievers and low achievers. And if I could summarize this table, this graph in one phrase, it's this. Connecting truly is about others. It's about locking in with another person. And not sure if you're a Zig Ziglar fan, George, or
I love
the late great Zig Ziglar, the motivational speaker.
Yeah, he was great.
His probably most famous quote ever, which I've heard many times and don't always apply to my life and struggle with, is that he said if you help enough people, right, get what they want, you can have everything you want. If you help enough people get what you want, you can have everything that you want. And oftentimes in business, it just gets, we think about, we kind of externally know that, oh yeah, we got to help people, but do we really focus on connecting with others' needs, what they want? And I found there's, why do some insurance professionals struggle to focus on others? And I think there's three things that have come across in looking at this. And when I say immaturity, I don't mean that they just look young. I mean, I started in the business at 22, and I look like a baby, and I probably talked, I talked a little bit immature,
I doubt it.
But true maturity is the ability to see and act on behalf of others. I go back to that. I showed a picture of my kids earlier, right? I chuckle. I mean, I see this oftentimes with my kids. I have my oldest daughter, George. She's in charge of unloading the dishwasher, right? And then the other daughter is in charge of putting stuff in. And so the one night, one of my daughters was staying with her grandma overnight, and I told my daughter, hey, listen, your sister is gone tonight, so I need you to take care of the dishwasher, meaning that I was trying to say, you need to do it all. She's not here. And I come back, and of course, only half is done. And her comment was, well, it's not my job. It's that same thing we see in the business. Sometimes we don't want to act on behalf of other people. Number two is ego. I'm a salesperson at heart, so I have an ego. I get it. But there's a difference between an ego that comes with just a confidence and a presence versus an ego that overshadows the ability to connect with other people. And one of my favorite sales mentors, Jeffrey Gitomer, he always jokes that he trains salespeople across the country, and he says, sometimes I come, I don't really have to say anything. It's because they're salespeople; they already know everything anyway. I always kind of laugh at that because it's so true. And then the last thing I want to share, and this is really key, is that the failure to value everyone. I heard this quote once, and it said that to add value to others, you must first value others. And often here, and I say this too, George, in marketing and sales, you got to add value. And what's your value proposition? And what are you going to give as value? But until you really value others, really value them as people, it's very difficult to add value. Yeah. And the reality of it is that every single person, whether it be a prospect, whether it be a client, whether it be someone in your office, they're asking three basic questions about you. Right? Whether you're trying to transfer an idea, a service, a product, it doesn't matter. If you're trying to influence somebody to do something, they're asking three basic questions. Again, these aren't complicated, but it's how well are you doing them. Number one is, do you care for me? Right? People don't, again, you've probably heard this quote before, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And it's, do you really care for me? I need to feel that. Number two is, can you help me? I have a problem, I have a situation, I have an issue. Can you actually help me through that? And then finally, of course, is, can I trust you? Which is the bottom line of all communication and connection, is trust. And as I told agents throughout the country, I'm like, if people can't answer yes to all three of those, you'd be very unlikely to make a sale, right? And if you have clients that are unsure of these, you're very likely to lose them as clients. If you've lost that ability, that you don't care for them anymore, or that you can't help them anymore, or that they can't trust you anymore, for whatever the reasons may be. Because connecting is an attitude.
I think those
really
questions.
Is.
Well, I think those questions were really right to the point. Do you care for me? That's the hardest thing to get across to people, I guess, in a sale, isn't it? First thing, do you really care, or are you just here for the money? I know that. I'm glad you brought that up. I'm going to start caring for people. I do anyway. Go ahead.
Oh, George, you're always caring for people.
Right.
I've known you for a while now, and yeah, and really, and part of that is, well, how do you get people to know that they care for you? Well,
Right. Right.
again, it really starts in turn. It's an attitude. I mean, there isn't a black or white answer on that, but there is an attitude behind it. And I think back when I was in college, George, I was taking a summer class locally. I was going to a Ford University. I was taking a summer class, and there was a history class, and there was two different instructors, and they taught the exact same material, had the same syllabus, same books, right, same everything.
Mm-hmm.
But when it came time to register, people would like have to get on like right away to get in because they wanted one instructor over the other. And the question is, well, they teach the same stuff. It's the same material, same timeline, same syllabus. Why? Because one had an attitude, one created an experience, the other one just kind of went through the motions. And you think about that even in the insurance industry, right?
Mm-hmm.
Oftentimes people go, well, we kind of got the same products and services. Not that I believe this, but this is what's said, right?
Right.
We have the same products and services, or represent the same companies, or we're all local this or whatever. But the question I would ask is, why is one person getting the business over the other? Well, yeah, it's relationships, but probably because they're creating an experience, something that the other person can relate to.
Mm-hmm.
And attitude doesn't just come from words. In fact, there are three components to communication. And as you know, George, I do a lot of stuff on digital communication and blogging and all those kind of things. But there are three main forms to communication, and we all know this. But what we say, right, the actual words that are coming out of our mouth.
Right.
Number two is the way that we say it, so our tonality. And then finally is what others see.
Wow.
How they perceive your message. Maybe it's your body language, or a smile, or your eyebrows, or what you're wearing. I mean, it could be a number of different things, right? And so I'll ask you, George, if you know the answer, great. If not, there's no wrong guesses on this. But if I had to tell you or ask you, what do you think percent of what people believe, what people really believe in what you're trying to communicate, what percentage do you think is simply of what you say, the actual words that are coming out of your mouth?
I know it's not very high. It's just more the way you say it, or it's more what others see. But I know it's 20% maybe.
It's you're close. You're close. What we actually say, the words itself, it comprises, and this is done through several studies, only 7% of what people actually believe in the message you're trying to communicate with them is in what you say. Over 90% is what people see and the way that you say it and present it, right? So it's really important. I love to reference this graph with a story that I had. This is an absolute 100% true story that happened to me in my second year of the insurance industry. Okay, so I was. The agency I worked for, we had acquired another agency, basically because there was a very tiny agency that the owner had passed away, had a brain tumor. It was a very sad situation, but my owner agreed to take over his book of business. And so his book of business was in a city. It was some of them not in the best neighborhoods, quite honestly, but we took it over kind of as a favor, so to speak. At least that's what I was told. And as a 23-year-old, it was my job now, George, to go out and service some of these accounts. And one day, my job was to go visit it was a Mexican restaurant, but the reality of it was, as I found out, it was a Mexican bar that served some chips, and it was a Mexican bar. Downtown. This was in downtown Milwaukee, and so I didn't know what to expect. Again, I was 23, didn't know better, but I show up. And if you ever seen those movies where someone, it's daylight outside, and there's this dark bar, and the door opens, and the light creeps through, and all these people kind of turn around on their bar stools and the smoking gates and stare at you?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. That was me. That was me. Mid-afternoon, I'm walking in, and people are, oh gosh, yeah, they all turn around and are like, okay, who are you, and are you here, are you here for us, or do we need to do something to you? And I thought, okay. So all I could muster up was, in my 23-year-old, being naive, is, hey guys, how you doing today? Right? I didn't know what I was doing, but I smiled and all those kind of things. Long story short is, I was actually able to meet with the owner, and he spoke zero English, no English at all. And I took 1 year of Spanish in high school, really, so I couldn't speak Spanish. So here we are trying to communicate, and I had to get a change made on his insurance policy and get him to sign off on it.
Mhm.
And he can't speak English. I can't really speak Spanish. And so through nodding and shrugging and pointing and smiling, over a period of 20, 25 minutes, I was actually able to get him to sign the document. And maybe he didn't know what he was doing, but the bottom line was we got it done. I walked out the door, and I felt like, wow, I was actually able to communicate, in some ways connect with this guy without even using the words. And so it kind of goes back to the point of 7% is just words, but it was quite an interesting story to say. There's more to that story. I'll tell you sometime, but it's pretty
Okay,
interesting.
that'd be great. That'd be great.
and the yeah, I would be happy to. But the bottom line of this, as this slide says, is you don't have to be, this amazing speaker to possess a presence and to connect with other people. You just got to be positive. You got to believe in what your message is, and you got to focus on other people. And one of my favorite quotes from John Maxwell is this: that nothing can happen through you until it happens in you.
Wow.
Right? And so I always tell people, like, every message you communicate, and this is whether it's a one-on-one conversation, at a group meeting, whether you're trying to write a blog post, whether you're trying to send an email, it doesn't matter. It's all communications, and nothing can happen through you. You can't deliver a message until it first happens. I always tell people it starts in your heart as an emotion. It goes to your head as a thought, and it comes out as action in words or something you type on a keyboard.
Wow.
And, John Maxwell also finishes that the people may not always remember what you said or did, but they'll always remember how you made them feel. And so, and this all sounds great, and it is, but the next step to this, when I talk about dynamic communication, and this is where things kind of fall apart, is that to really connect with people, it requires a tremendous amount of energy. And you can call this hustle, you can call this hard work, you can call this work ethic, it doesn't matter. But I had somebody tell me one story. He said, it doesn't take much energy to say something, but it does take a lot of energy to move someone to action.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that happens a lot in the insurance industry, is that a lot of people, he's a good talker. He's a good talker. He can say things. That we're good at saying things, but not so good at moving others to action. And so I put up here the 4 unpardonable sins for insurance agents. 4 things that insurance agents, again, I'm categorizing, but oftentimes I see, and I've done myself, by the way, as well, but causes problems and keeps them from being unable to connect with someone. So number 1 is they're uncommitted. And what does that mean? It means that when you're talking to someone, is you don't believe in the message you're actually conveying. And there's 5 parts to this. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time, but I'll briefly go through the 5 parts of being uncommitted, or to be committed. It takes these things. Number 1 is you have to believe 100% in the agency you're working for, or the company you're working for.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't mean they're perfect. Doesn't mean they're perfect, but it means you believe in what they represent. Number 2 is you got to believe in the products and services 100% in what you're selling, what you're representing. Again, not saying they're perfect, but you got to believe in those products 100%. Number 3 is where people get stuck, George. It's the belief in yourself, because it's easy to believe in an agency potentially if they're a good agency, or the companies you represent and the products and services, because they're not you, it's someone else. But when you believe in yourself and your personal growth and your development and what you're doing, right, and how you're growing and evolving and what you bring to the table, that becomes difficult. Number 4, people are uncommitted because they often don't believe in the value they bring. If someone said, why are you different from the competition, could you answer? Not just saying, well, yeah, we're local and we got good service, but really, what is your value? And then finally, the reason why people are uncommitted is because they don't believe in the outcome, or at least they're not sold on the outcome. Because I have a lot of people in sales who say, well, Brent, the word sales kind of makes me feel, a little bit, I get squirmy when I hear salesperson.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, if you're fully committed, if you fully believe in the outcome, meaning that when you talk to someone, whether you're sharing an idea, whether you're sharing a product, whether you're sharing a service, and it helps them, it makes their outcome better, you don't ever feel like you're selling anything ever, because you're committed in the outcome. Mm-hmm. So that's the first part, is the first sin, is being uncommitted. Number 2 is being uninteresting. I had a midway through my career, George, I was about 7, 8 years in my insurance career, and I had already built a pretty nice book of business, but I hit a wall. It just, it happens to a lot of people, and whatever it was, I flatlined. And even the agency owner's like, Brent, what's going on? Like, what's happening? So I was kind of doing some soul searching, and I had a conversation with a mentor of mine, and I was basically belly aching over a cup of coffee, saying, hey, listen, I don't know, maybe I'm not very good at this anymore. Everybody I talk to, it's insurance, they're just not very interested. And he looked at me and he smiled, and he said, Brent, let me ask you a question. He goes, are they not interested, or are you uninteresting?
Mm-hmm.
Ooh. Ooh. I said, oh,
Man.
because I kind of lost my fire, right, to be
Yeah,
interesting.
sure.
So that's the next sin that people have. Number one is, and number three is being uncomfortable, which this just takes time and practice. Every agent, you gotta go out there and you gotta do it. There's a lot of things to do, but being uncomfortable sometimes, I always say do your ABCs. Action brings clarity, right? If you're gonna sit in the sideline, I know people that, well, when I get that next designation, George, that's when I'm gonna go out and really do it, right? When I go through that 6-month training course, then I'm gonna be ready to go sell some insurance. I'm all for education and learning, of course. I do training, for goodness sake. But sometimes you just got to go out there and do it, right? And that action will bring you clarity. And finally is being unprepared. This is like the biggest one of all, right? And I'm going to mention this just in a second about being unprepared for whether it be a meeting, an appointment, what have you. So how do you use energy to connect? When I say energy, hustle, work, whatever you want to call it. Number one is initiative. And talk about connection and communication. It's been said that initiative to any relationship is what a lighted match is to a candle. You got to go first. So when I talk to agencies and agents, this could be the first to reach out a hand at a networking event, right? I mean, sometimes people go to networking events and they go stand in the corner or talk to their one friend. It could be the first to reach to a client who hasn't heard from you from a while. Reach out. You gotta take the initiative to make the phone call, or the initial phone call, or the email, or take the initiative to start your own blog, or figure out how you become a better writer or speaker. Take the initiative to grow. So that's number one. Number two is clarity. I just talked about being prepared. Man, there is no reason for agents not to be prepared today. I mean, there just is no excuse. I mean, between the networks that we have built, really through social media, the people that we know, and websites, and blogs, and LinkedIn, and Facebook reviews, and everybody you can find out so much about a person or a business before you meet, and come prepared with questions and with ideas that they can use right away, versus showing up like I did my very first sales appointment I want to talk about in a second, where I asked the question, what is it you guys do here?
Oh, no. Oh, no.
Yeah, that wasn't a good choice. Number three is patience. I have a hard time with this one, right? But if I bet you, George, if you went out and you talked to 10 people today, if you just went out in the streets or whatever, right? Just randomly talking to people, and you said, hey, how are things going? I'd be willing to guess that a lot of people would say, right, good or fine, but they would follow up if you got to know them, they'd say, well, it's busy. Things are busy. Everybody's busy. I don't know anybody that's not busy. And so when you understand to connect, that it takes patience, that sometimes you got to slow down and take just an extra minute or two in a conversation. It can go a really long way because most people don't give them the time today. Selflessness, right? You got to be a giver, not a taker. And this is a mindset of being. I always tell agents, try to develop. I heard this from a guy named Dave Ramsey, a financial advisor, who says you got to have the heart of a teacher. You got to have the heart of a teacher and be selfless when you're talking to people. I love that thought process of being a teacher. And then finally is stamina. This one took me a long time to figure out. This seems almost like the inverse of what I've been talking about. But I had a situation, looking back, and I had this really important 3 o'clock appointment, right? It's a big deal. This is a big opportunity. And I also have a 7 a.m. coffee meeting, a 9 a.m. meeting, a 10:30 meeting, a lunch meeting, a 2 o'clock phone call, and then this 3 o'clock appointment. And I get to 3 o'clock and I wonder why I'm not at my best. Because you got to figure out where and when to recharge. Because again, connecting, when you do it really well, when you put your heart and soul into it, it does drain your energy. Now, some people say you get energy from connecting. I get that, but you got to find your time, your peaks, your valleys when you're at your best. So for me, it's going, well, geez, it doesn't always work this way. I know life is. If someone gives you a 3 o'clock appointment, you're going to take it, right? But if you can choose and say, listen, I know I'm best at 9 a.m., I want to be doing my best appointments at 9 a.m., right? Just kind of having that thought process, at least to think about it.
Got it.
I want to kind of wrap up a little bit and wind this up with just the thought process of this, is that connecting is a skill. I've had a lot of people tell me, George, even to me now, especially now that I do training and speaking, well, Brent, it's easy for you. You're just a natural speaker. And I do think that we all have our natural strengths, our God-given strengths that were built in, right? We have some of those. But I can tell you, and you know this too, George, the people that are successful and you see when they're good at it, they've worked their tail off to get there, to some capacity, right? They've done things.
Sure.
And so yeah, I don't think it's a matter of you just have it or you don't. I think it's a matter of you got it, and then how hard you want to work at to get better at it. I mentioned earlier, I kind of already kind of shared part of that story, but I mentioned my very first sales appointment in the insurance world, and I had this a little bit of confidence and probably an ego. I'm 22. I mean, whatever. I can do anything, and I'm invincible. And I'm driving to this appointment, and my confidence kind of turned into terror as I pulled in the parking lot, because all of a sudden I'm like, I don't really know what I'm doing. Um, and I walked into this place, and the receptionist looks at me, and again, this is a quick print shop. This is a print shop, as basic as it gets.
Mm-hmm.
And the receptionist kind of looks at me with a puzzled look, like, who is this, like, 15-year-old that looks like he's 15 coming into the business? And I say, hey, I'm here to see the owner. I forgot his name, John or whatever. And she's like, really? Okay. And I look down the hall. I kind of peek down the hall, and there's the owner of this quick print shop. And he literally looks at me, George, and like he does a double take, and then puts his head down and shakes his head like, oh my gosh, like, I can't believe I'm wasting my time talking to this kid. And so again, I walk back to the back, and I'm thinking, okay, it's okay, I got this. And as I said earlier, my very first question after I introduced myself, and my hands were sweaty and my armpits, who knows, I was gross. And the guy looks at me, and I say, what is it you guys do here? And so it got worse. It got worse. And when I left, I had two thoughts. Number one is, okay, I can't do this. I'm terrible. I got to quit. But then after I kind of got through that a little bit, after the first initial shock wore off, I thought, you know what? I just need to get better. This is a skill. I need to get better. So I would ask everybody listening to this, wherever you're at, right, in your communication and connection skill, whether you're a 2 or whether you're a 7, you can always improve. I don't think anybody's at a 10 because we're always in process. But the question I would ask is, what are you doing today to improve your ability to connect with others more effectively tomorrow? Because as Ralph Waldo Emerson says here, all great speakers were once bad speakers first. And I think this holds 100% true for insurance agents. I know insurance agents who struggle when they got started, or maybe they've hit a rut after a few years. And what separates the successful agents from the agents who consistently struggle or maybe even quit is that successful agents understand this principle, that connecting is more skill than natural talent. And they work hard every day to learn, to grow, to develop. They understand success is a process, but they've got to be engaged, actively engaged in the process.
That's beautiful.
So I just want to kind of, I just kind of want to wrap up with this, George.
Okay.
Yeah, please, George, please. I'm sorry.
All right, question. Did you get that account? Did you get the print shop?
No, I didn't. The very first one I went to?
Yeah.
No, I didn't. I did not get it. No, that day I walked out of there sheepishly. I was almost ashamed to even call him back. I did call back and follow up, but I did not write that account.
Okay, all right.
Although I will say this though, it's kind of funny. In my book of business, I had, I'll tell you, it wasn't that one. Maybe I left too bad of an impression, but I did have a book of business, about 5 or 6 print shops in my career, and I wasn't really targeting those. So I eventually figured that out a little bit. but it was a process. Yeah. I was. It's funny you asked that question, because I hadn't thought about that before. But no, I was 22 and pretty embarrassed and beat up when I walked out of there. And I did follow up. I had a really hard time even calling, and he just kind of gave me that. Yeah, we're not going to go your direction. I said, okay. So, but that was a long time ago. Yeah. So I just want to kind of wrap up here and just leave you with this. As I said in the beginning of this presentation, leadership is influence, right? Nothing more, nothing less. And standing out and influencing your prospects and your clients, it's definitely more challenging than ever. I've done webinars on how much noise there is out in the world. But the ability to communicate, and more importantly, to connect, is the #1 determination of your success or your failure. And as I just mentioned, the great news is that connecting is more skill than natural talent. You can learn to connect better. And I say this all the time in my keynotes, and I mean this from the bottom of my heart. And George, I know you've been in this industry, I'm not going to say a really long time, but you've been longer than me, right?
Longer than anybody, but go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, I know. But so you can probably agree with this, is that especially today, the insurance industry is desperately seeking leaders who make a positive impact for others. And I know right now there are leaders and potential leaders listening to this that are ready to make a difference. And so I just challenge you to grow your communication, your connection ability with others, your prospects, your clients, because it's about influence. And we need the right type of influencers, not the wrong type. And there's a lot of those that are not doing maybe the right thing. But I know there's so many people, you wouldn't be listening to this and you wouldn't have been following George and all the great stuff he does if you weren't interested in growing yourself and learning more. So I hope people vibe with that message and understand that connecting is about influence. And if I could, George, I want to offer kind of a little bonus incentive for your audience, if that's okay.
Good, please do. Oh, that
so,
looks
yeah. So what I've learned, I've done a lot. I do a lot of training and speaking, and I've also started to add some group and individual coaching. And I've learned a lot about the power of coaching and what it does. And it's such a neat process. I have a coach myself, and it's really changed my perspective and been so beneficial. And the three main things it's done is it creates new awareness for things that you may not even be aware of, right, that you can do. It increases responsibility and it gives you accountability. Right, three things I think everyone needs. So if you're interested in, just email me. It's brent@bizgriz.com. And then from there I can give you a link, scheduling a time for a complimentary 30-minute coaching session. And really all I want to do in 30 minutes is give you some clarity, hopefully on some things, and then also give you a little feel of what that looks and feels like. And so you can experience. There's 100% no obligation to do anything after that, but I want you at least have the opportunity to maybe give it a shot and see what you think, and I think it'll be very, very beneficial to you. So
do I, brother.
That's all I have, George, and I'm open for any questions.
Well, I think that that this is a wonderful opportunity. I don't remember ever having anybody that I interviewed offer something like this. This is really neat, and I know because I listen to your programs and when I can, and even though they're basic, you know what we just talked about here is basic, but sometimes we have to go back to the basics. I mean, I was thinking about communication as you were talking, and gosh darn. Maybe I should take a step back here. Maybe and all of a sudden you're making me realize it. And I think that's the quality of a good speaker. And I know you are a good speaker, obviously, and that you've done it so often. But I think well, I guess, you know, you'd say you're preaching to the choir or something like that. I think we all kind of agree with everything you said, except we just need to be renewed. We just need to hear it from somebody else and say, hey, this is what it's all about. Put it in context and making steps. So I appreciate what you're doing very much. And I know we'll be doing some more along the way here. That this will be, I'll put this both in my basics Monday morning and also in the regular Monday morning. And we'll put we'll put a note on the complimentary 30-minute coaching session in the email, so people can go back there and click on it, and you'll have your address right there. Then listen, I want to tell you, don't stop, keep communicating. We need you in this industry, and you were so right. We need a lot more verbal people, and boy, you are one. So thanks again, and I'll look forward to seeing the rest of you next Monday morning.